Alrighty then, everyone. Thank you so much for coming back to another episode of the Social Otaku. So let's see if we can get this started here. My name, once again, is Josh, aka Josh in the Shell, and I am joined here by Elliot, aka Surly Temple. Say hi, Elliot.
Howdy there, folks. How are we doing?
And my audio is working correctly this time. Yay.
Woo!
Alright, so
yep,
today...
I can hear me, absolutely. Good.
Alright. So, today we are going to be talking about taking your first steps, and we've had some feedback recently about this being a little bit too in between both casual and essentially being a class, so for now we're going to try and be a little more casual. So I've prepared some, but not a lot. I know, Elliot, you've prepared some.
Not too much. I kept it light this week.
Alrighty then, well. How did, let's start with this. How did you get started with, I guess, being more social? Getting out more? Making friends with people who aren't in your nerd groups?
Well, I went to this grand place called college, and
what a loser.
Honest, yeah, what a loser. I will say, going to college, it's kind of easy to get lost in your own head and your own space, especially if you have a room by yourself, which I did my sophomore year, and I noticed my sophomore year I was less social than I was my freshman year, and I wish I could take that back a little bit, or at least put myself more out there. But I have some stuff about college stuff. One is cooking for your dorm. That is what I did my freshman year, is that I cooked for my entire dorm and made tacos for everybody.
That sounds like that cost money.
It costs money, but it was also a nice way for me to get and interact with a lot of people that I hadn't known before.
Yeah, that is actually a pretty good icebreaker.
Yeah, I was like, hey guys, because we're in Minnesota, and they never really had tacos before, unless, you know, we're talking about Taco Bell. And they made Spanish rice and guacamole. It was a little bit of taste of Texas, but in the heart of the Midwest. It was pretty nice. Another way that I bonded with my comrades is someone brought a gaming console, and I just spent a bunch of hours playing Super Smash Brothers with a lot of the people on the floor. Or people watched me play Zelda, and that was a really good way I got in contact with people. And then 3, having a shared Netflix account, and just holding kind of movie nights or just anime nights. Somebody brought a whole DVD collection of Yu Yu Hakusho, and just watching that, and watching Yusuke power through his troubles with the power of friendship. That's one of my fondest memories I've had.
Anime brings us all together.
Really did. Really
and
did.
I apologize if the dog came through. Apparently there is someone out the window. We just recently replaced the windows, and so it's more clear, this new window, and she's just been going at it. So I apologize if there's more barking during this podcast.
Oh, that sounds like a distraction.
It is a little bit, not gonna lie. But anywho. But yeah, you know, watching anime with friends, or with people you've just met, that's always a fun thing. I mean, I was pretty bad when I started college. I was pretty antisocial. Yeah, it was
Part of the antisocial social club over here.
And, well, I mean, for me personally, I kind of looked up to certain real life people, and I liked how certain characters were portrayed in shows that I liked. So I was like, you know what? The people I like the most tend to be charismatic. They tend to be outgoing, or at least appear to be outgoing. So, I started looking into that, and then, I started looking into a few other things about behavioral science and just things that interested me. That's where I ran into neurolinguistic programming, and so I took a big interest in it, but I tried really hard for quite some time to find out what it meant to be social. And I mean, for me personally, it took me a few years, but eventually it caught on, and it can probably go a lot faster than a few years. But that's how long it took me, being all on my lonesome with that whole endeavor. So hopefully we can help more people with this, and their journey's not going to be quite as long, I guess.
I know I kind of have the opposite problem, where I started out really being social in my early years, and then through whatever circumstances happened, I became less and less so. And it kind of sucked, and I kind of got this negative attitude towards myself, kind of this negative feedback loop, like, I'm not going out, I'm not going to have fun. But it actually took a friend who broke through that and like showed me, because do you know what Streetpassing is with a 3DS?
No.
If you street pass somebody with a 3DS, it's like, oh, you pass this person, and then you see their me that they created. And I made a friend just by street passing the same guy in my dorm, who is literally one floor above me. And I still talk to this guy, and we're still really good friends. And just something simple like that, just street passing, and then them randomly being like, are you Surly, the guy that I street passed? Like, that's still one of my best friends out there, just from a simple little gesture like that.
That is very touching.
Oh.
I feel touched, but not inappropriately.
Show me on this doll where you touched you. But it's the heart. It's always the heart.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've made friends playing Pokemon Go, of all things. Gets you outside, gets you talking to people.
Video games are a really good way. Like, back in the day, Xbox had Xbox Live, and a lot of people made friends just by jumping on random Xbox Live servers. People that, you wouldn't imagine be friends with, But some of them just still get back together and play. It's really amazing what the power of video games can do.
Yeah, and that's definitely a good thing to try. But for this series, we're really focusing on making friends outside of the internet. So
yes,
a lot of people listening have probably made one or two friends on a Discord server, on I don't know, PlayStation Live, things like that, or was it PlayStation Online, or is it Live?
I think it's PlayStation Now, technically.
Oh yeah. I've never once called it PlayStation Now, so.
Hey, it's a bad name. I don't like that
name.
It
doesn't really roll off the tongue.
Xbox Live is much better.
But yeah, with that feature of street passing on the 3DS, and with games like Pokemon Go, Ingress, games that get you outside and walking around and talking to people, like, those are good ways to get yourself started without, getting too far out of your comfort zone. But one big thing that really helped me personally break through, how I got started, what I should say is how I really got started, was pushing myself out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
So for the longest time, and I actually realized, side story here, so I realized that the agoraphobia that I had, now agoraphobia has two definitions. One is a fear of wide open spaces. The other is a fear of crowds. So mine was a fear of crowds. Now, part of my getting over that agoraphobic phase was definitely getting out there, doing more, and my own path to becoming the socialite that I am today. But I realized that part of what triggered it in the first place was a bad relationship that it kind of caused for me different stressors that eventually made it so that with that kind of toxic relationship, things can get out of hand really quickly, and they can prevent you from, one, if it's a toxic relationship, get out of there anyway, but when it comes to talking to other people, a toxic relationship can really affect your ability to socialize with other people, because you're stressed out, you've maybe developed some new anxieties, things like that. So it can be, it can be kind of dangerous. But anyway, so during that relationship, I had this fear of crowds. So anytime I went out, I was anxious, because there might have been 10 or more people in a certain place, and if I didn't know any of them, it was really freaky. But what I ended up doing was I just went out to bars and clubs, and it was hard, and I had some panic attacks along the way, but one, it meant I could hang out with my current friends more, so it was pretty much the only way for a while that my friend Colin and I, who best friend in the world, no offense, Elliot, Colin got there first. We've known each other since second grade, so
Dang
it. But anyway, it was one of the only ways we could hang out, at least regularly, was we would meet up at a place that's kind of in between where he was living and where I'm living, and we would have fun. We would get into a club or a bar, and over time, as I started implementing some of these techniques that I had already known about and already knew how to do and how to try at these things, I quickly figured out a lot of stuff about myself. When you're talking about anxiety of like a crowd or something like that, it's really about your own anxieties, and there are certain ways that you can help yourself, certain general ways that we can talk about throughout the course, and that some of which we've already talked about, of how to be more confident. But at the end of the day, if it's actual anxiety, then that's something that's very personal to you, and there's no easy answer, but one of the best ways to do it, yes, there's a possibility you'll have panic attacks. I did. Like, even after I started being considered like the most charismatic one in the group, I really had problems with crowds still. So sometimes I did have a few panic attacks at that point as well.
Absolutely.
So if you're not willing to risk a panic attack, if you don't feel safe, which I totally understand, because there's also the point where, maybe there were definitely times when I pushed myself too far, and if you are having a panic attack, you did push yourself too far, so it's going to be up to you to know what those limits are. But find some way to go somewhere where you don't know people and kind of put yourself in that situation. Maybe go out to eat once a week, or go to a bar, or even just start by going to a place where these people are going to be, I guess, safer to be around, like a comic book store, or there are actually game shops specifically designed for people to meet up. It's not just a game shop or a comic shop that people, like, they have a space for people to meet up, but there's a place in the mall nearby. It's called Play Live. I think it opened up relatively recently, and that's basically, like, you go in there, you pay $5 a seat, and then you sit there and you play games with whoever wants to play games with you. Like, that's a really good way to meet people. Or, you know, instead of buying things online, go shopping for it and interact with the employees. You know, maybe strike up a conversation with another customer if you happen to be in the same aisle. You know, if you can't push yourself to go into that bar or club like I did at the beginning, do something, you know?
Sometimes it takes baby steps to take a giant step. And
Well,
I know,
yeah, it's all about just moving in general.
yeah, I know my friend, he recently was feeling really down about something he had to do, and he's like, "Oh, I don't know if I can do this." He had to go to the DMV, you know, and I'm like, well, why is that such a stressful thing? But apparently for him, it was incredibly stressful. And so he went there, and I just like talked him through it, and then he did it, and he's like, "Wow, like thanks for talking me through it. Like I definitely hyped this up for myself way too much." And then the satisfaction of going there, doing that, getting it done, and having a plan and kind of doing that stuff, kind of made that positive feedback. And I know I talk about a lot of negative feedback, but that was a positive feedback, having something to do. You know, having someone to talk with, even if it was on the phone, or because he was very worried about talking with people. But I just told him, like, just talk to them like a regular person. Don't belittle them or anything, and just be nice about it. And hopefully they'll be nice back to you. And they're like, they were nice back to me. And I'm like, great.
Yeah, people have a tendency, and this is something we were taught at Unnamed Company, is that a lot of times people will just inadvertently, people will just kind of match your level, like your emotion. So if you go in there like, okay, you need to fix this right now, they're going to immediately clam up and go, well, sir, you know what, I don't have to do anything. We can, you know, and immediately
Yes.
you're on the wrong foot. But if you go up to someone happy, like, don't overdo it. Don't, you know, there's a point where, here's an interesting story. I don't know if I've told this on the podcast before. I had struck up a conversation with a gentleman who was visiting here from England, I think.
Interesting.
He was a comedian, and he was here for like a week or something like that. And we started talking, and I mentioned that I was trying to get back into stand-up and things like that. And he said something very interesting. You know, I do know that there are people who lose themselves in their acts, you know, in their on-stage persona. But he said that I seemed like I was, you know, performing. But he only seemed to notice that after I straight up said what I was doing. Like, literally, I told him, I'm kind of experimenting with how I'm just like different techniques, I guess. You know, techniques with meeting new people and establishing rapport and things like that. His first reaction was, wow, you did that really well. I mean, we've been talking for, you know, at the time we had been talking for like 30, 45 minutes. And then he sat there and thought about it, and then said it looked like I was performing. So, you know, after that point, I started thinking about it, and I have to figure out if it's just because I mentioned something and retroactively he can tell, or is that something that does come off when I talk to people, you know, things like that. But there is going to be a point at some point where you can just tell someone's faking it. So even if you are, quote-unquote, performing and being very, you know, at a certain point, the more charisma you have, the more you are technically acting, no matter how hard you try to do it genuinely, there's only so much charisma you can put forth without trying. So you are performing to some level, but just try not to get lost in that performance, I guess, is the point of that little
That's
ramble.
That's almost the premise of fake it till you make it, almost.
Yeah, it is.
It pretty much is.
And I think it's really funny that he thought I would lose myself to the performance, but you know, that's the method that I go with, and I know that he's coming from a place where he's just seen that happen to a lot of comedians, because at a certain point, you know, a comedian has a certain persona, like they're really angry up on stage, or they're really goofy up on stage, but in real life, they're calm, they're normal, and I know that he's probably seen that a lot, so it's possible it's just one of those confirmation bias things, like, now that I know that you are trying to do things, you know, he can then tell, maybe, you know, I don't know what training he had, so there's a possibility that some of the acting techniques or some of the, persuasion techniques that I had been trying out that day, you know, once he was looking for them, he recognized them, and without realizing that he recognized those techniques, he was like, oh yeah, you know, he does seem kind of performy.
Yeah, that's kind of an advanced level for some people to pick up on that, because I know whenever I'm there, that is like something I am not paying attention to, mainly because being an entertainer, I like give all the attention to me, ha 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 ha. But I don't know, sometimes the feeler in me does have that kind of like, ooh, something seems off. But at the same time, like, I feel bad if I bring attention to it, if someone's faking it too much. Because I feel kind of like a jerk. Like, hey man, you don't have to put on this show for me. I've said that to a couple of people. And you know, after I said that, I felt better than I did when I didn't say it. So it's kind of a weird catch-22. I don't know. It's definitely a weird situation.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I don't think we necessarily need to worry about, you know, telling people when to point it out or not point it out. But at least I think we should all be aware that getting that deep into a performance is a real risk, especially because. You know, the reason why I don't believe that I was, quote, performing, I guess we should really just separate being real and performing. I don't feel like I was performing because everything that I said, every way that I acted, even if I was using a technique, I was being genuine. Like, all of this is genuinely me. These are things that I would say. These are things that I would do. So I think, quote, performing is when you lose yourself in a way of acting that is just not who you are.
Yeah.
So, I would say, you know, if something feels like you, just go for it. You know, like we said in the whole Fake It Till You Make It podcast, just go for it. You know, try it out, and if you like it, keep it. Do that, and eventually it will, you know, just kind of normalize over time. It'll just come naturally after a while.
Yeah, I think that's a very important thing, just keeping it light, breezy, and natural. But I don't know, it took me a while to get to there, and I'm sure it's gonna take people a long time to get to there too. Like, it just doesn't happen overnight, so don't expect, like, oh, I'm just gonna change up and be a different person today.
Yeah, and that does bring up another topic or another part of the topic I wanted to touch on, is the fact that sometimes I know people will be really scared to, like, you know, they'll go out there and they'll be like, oh god, am I standing up straight? Am I smiling too much? Am I not smiling enough? You know, all this stuff is going through your head, so if this is gonna be like the first time that you're going out in a really long time, and you're kind of nervous about what exactly to do, I would say don't focus on, are you standing up straight, this and that. Just all I want you to do is focus on being conscious about these things. Don't try to stand up straighter. Well, I would say with standing up straight, I would definitely try. If you notice you're slouching, just stand up straighter. But other things like being too friendly, not being friendly enough, don't worry about actually doing it. Just be conscious, try to see if you can notice how you're acting, how other people act around you, and then just kind of think back on it later. Don't start off by trying all these different things, because you're just going to make yourself nervous and you're going to be worse. You can have the best plan for body language in the world, but if you're not actually confident, your confident body language is going to come off as weird and disingenuous, and will often give the impression that you are not confident, because you're not.
Yeah.
I was watching a video recently that they were going over body language. I just wanted to see how other people were talking about it, and they did say one thing that was very very important. I disagreed with a lot of the video on some of the information they were giving, but but this really kind of stuck with me. Body language is not just some magical tool that makes you instantly better. Reading body language is not necessarily about knowing, well, he put his hand in his left pocket, so obviously he's thinking about, I don't know, toy cars or something like that, to give a really just a wacky example to illustrate my point. All you can do is know what works for you, and do things with confidence, because you don't do it with confidence, your body's gonna move, but it won't do anything for you.
Absolutely. I needed confidence today, because I was playing some games with some randos, and I like playing single-player games.
Mm-hmm.
But my friend kind of forced me into this online arena with other friends, and it was a really nice experience. I was like, okay, just put down your biases, talk in a friendly manner, and see if you can get some people to talk back. And they were really friendly to me. They revived me when I was down.
Mm-hmm.
I helped them out, and a very positive experience. And I was going in thinking the worst, I'm in a public game with a bunch of randos.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is gonna be terrible. But I actually had a pleasant time. And I finally dove deep and was like, I gotta, of course, over my headset, of course, I'm like, I sounded pretty charismatic and confident, and I made a couple of jokes here and there, and I think one of them requested to be my friend afterwards, and that's
Nice.
always a good thing to see. Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to think if there's anything we really want to talk about. I mean, getting started is pretty unique for everyone, so I don't know necessarily if there's anything that we've missed, but
It's kind of like freeform jazz. You can start it many different ways,
mhm.
but don't go too overboard. Or you'll put off a lot of people if you're like, hi, I'm this, and you're just putting that on so much.
Right.
People are gonna be like, ugh.
and again, these are things that some of the stuff that we're saying not to do. These are things that I could do. These are things that Elliot could do.
Absolutely.
But that's because we're out there. And one of the things that you'll notice anytime you're learning anything, one of the best ways to learn, especially if you're a thinker, but just overall, one of the best ways to learn and improve your skills at something is to just be aware of more things about it. One trick that I learned when I was a kid to improve, to improve intuition, was to just try and work through consciously why I think a certain thing. Like, you can intuit something like, you feel like you wake up in the morning and you, quote, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.
Yeah.
Or it's gonna be a good day, or, something like that. Instead of just leaving it there, what you would do was you would say, okay, I have this feeling that something's gonna go wrong today. Why do I feel like that? And so, what you do is you go through, okay, so, oh, that's right. I knew this was coming because last night I told myself I really should go grocery shopping and then I didn't. So when I go to eat breakfast, there's nothing in the fridge. So instead of just having the basic intuition of, something's gonna go wrong today, you actually figure out what precisely you're thinking about, and by making it conscious, you let your brain work around how these different things work. So by the time it gets back to being subconscious again, your intuition tends to be a lot more specific. So the same goes for socialization. Like, just be aware. That's why I said to, just be aware of how you're acting, how other people are acting, and just, even if you have to do this afterwards, like you go in and, you do whatever you can, and then afterwards think back, what did I do, what worked, what didn't. By working it through consciously, or even for some people, writing it down also really helps. That, getting that tactile function in there, like maybe keep a journal of every time you do this. You're just making yourself more aware of it consciously. And as you try things, and as you get more and more aware of them, over time, it'll just become natural. So the confidence that I learned became natural over time, and I did actually become confident. A lot of these tricks that I'll use to talk to people and convince them, or get in their good graces, I usually don't think about what I'm doing. The only time I ever think about what I'm doing is if I want to use a specific technique, and I will tell myself to use that technique, and then I'll just, I just do it all completely naturally because I understand it. Consciously, I was able to learn that, and I can do it very well.
Yeah.
Just going out there and letting yourself naturally evolve from just social interaction without trying new things or figuring things out. It can work, it just takes longer. And I don't think the results are as good. Because you can't really control, like, when you speak to someone, you want to come across as yourself. And sometimes I feel like some people will go out and they won't know what to do, how to look at things, how to change things. And as they start to become more social, just by nature of going out more, they become less like themselves when they're talking to people. And you can tell after about 10 minutes of just 10 minutes straight, like in a row all together, of talking to someone, you can usually notice when something's off. Like, you know what? We started off this conversation great, but something's just a little bit off. Well, that something, once you start making all this more in the front of your mind instead of the back of your mind, instead of just saying something's off about this, you'll be able to know exactly what's off about the conversation. And you'll be able to tell, for example, like what I was just talking about, like they're just not being genuine. And it's not like they're lying, they're just, not being their genuine selves, and that can be really off-putting to a lot of people.
Absolutely.
I can't really think of anything else I want to say.
Do you want me to put you on the spot?
Sure.
Do you remember how we first met? Besides the obvious, oh, it was at work. But do you know what I said to you?
I don't remember the exact words. I just remember, I remember we had a pun off at one point there. We had our first pun off on that first day we met.
I think you were wearing a shirt, and it had like something to do with beer or something, and it was like, it was
I was wearing
beer.
it was my my Mordor Dark Ale shirt, which I just found again like the other day actually.
Oh, awesome! Yeah,
I love that shirt.
Noticing what people are wearing and clothing like that, and just like making a comment about that can spawn a whole conversation and a friendship from that. And that's how we started our friendship. Is just us getting to a stupid pun off about Lord of the Rings, I think.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I don't remember exactly.
If you don't start those conversations, you'll never know how much of a connection you could be making.
Yeah. I'm glad you remembered.
Yeah. Well, I only kind of remembered. You remembered more than I did, which usually that goes the other way around, doesn't it?
Yeah,
or at least for as far as the podcast goes, it's been going the other way around with stuff like that.
It has. Oh yeah, it's the small victories. I tallied 1 for Elliot, 24 for Josh. We got it.
So do we want to pick a topic for next time?
I have wrote down, or is it written down?
Written down.
I have written down a couple of new suggestions. Would you like to hear them?
Yes, I would.
I have keeping up with online friends, keeping up with old friends, making friends in the workplace, what are most awkward moments and how we avoid doing that now, and social faux pas.
Well, with social faux pas, I feel like we probably need some more time to work on that. So if we do end up doing this next week,
maybe a future episode for that.
Maybe once we've had some time to work on it. Let me pull up the old list as well, just to see. No, I think most of the stuff on the old list we had said should come down the road as well. So read that off to me again.
We got how and where to approach people, body language, finding communities, comedy, which could also be its own.
Right.
Self-confidence versus self-work. We have networking. Why do we like what we like? We'll probably keep that for another time.
Right.
Importance of listening and watching others, and then the ones I just said.
Well, a couple come to mind. Given what we talked about today, we could do self-confidence versus self-worth, or you had one about watching people, right?
The importance of listening and watching others.
Yes, the importance of listening and watching others. That or the self-confidence versus self-worth, I think would be good ideas for next week. What do you think?
I agree. I will make notes of those self-confidence.
So which one do we want to do, or do we want to leave it up in the air and see if people can guess it?
The next topic is Josh. Roll credits. I'm just just joshing. It's really up to you, I guess. Let's either sound good to me. We just got taking our first steps. So what would be the second step? Would probably be watching others, right?
I would say so. I mean, and we did directly talk about that in this one. So yeah, let's do the importance of listening and watching others.
Yeah, because I feel like that would be a good second step.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although I am going to title next week's episode Step 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah, my
Because
friend
why
makes that
not?
joke all the time too. I love
I
that
just,
joke.
I don't know why, but it has never stopped being funny.
Probably because 2 rhymes with boogaloo so well.
It does,
It's
but
too
it's
good of a
also
rhyme.
like a nonsense phrase. And I don't know if it ever meant anything, but these days all it means is
The
easy
sequel.
humor.
It could have been like number 2, frying boogaloo or something, like just equally as stupid, but electric boogaloo makes it sound like some sort of ornate dance move that
It
you'd see
does,
in a
right?
disco.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, that you'd see in the discotheque or something.
Yeah.
I can't wait.